This washing machine looking thing beside me? That's maimai. A written game made by Sega, yes, that Sega, where you either smack buttons or slap the screen to hit notes and patterns. Simple enough, eh?
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
Unlike rhythm games you can just boot up on your PC with relatively consistent gameplay, maimai is completely dependent on the arcade cabinet itself. Now, here's the problem. As much I wanted to make this video in Canada, Bugs Bunny, we basically don't have maimai cabinets here. And even when we do, they're so ridiculously far apart that turning it into a video would be hella expensive. Canadian domestic airfare ain't cheap, you know. So, now what? I have an idea. Welcome to Metro Manila. And because this city somehow has an absolutely absurd amount of maimai machines packed into an area roughly the size of Calgary, I decided to make severely financial questionable decisions and visit every single location within 3 days. Yes, all 22 of them. I'll be ranking each arcade based on the cabinet quality, amenities, queue management, pricing, and the overall vibes, all while suffering through both touch and button playstyles at every stop. Quick disclaimer though, everything here was recorded from May 1st to May 3rd, 2026, so some information may be already out of date by the time this video goes live. I also relied on both the community maintained cabinet list and the official all.net locator to track these places down. And trust me, there's a reason I needed both.
Na naman to.
Now then, let's go play some maimai. Day 1 start around the malls connected to LRT1 and LRT2 line, 2 of Metro Manila's main rail system, and the first stop is Quantum at Edsa Marikina. Thankfully, this mall is connected to Santolan Station, making it one of the easier arcades to reach on the trip. Now, before talking about the cabinets themselves, let's quickly discuss Quantum pricing. One maimai session costs one gacha coin, I guess, which is equivalent to 50 pesos or roughly $1.12 Canadian. Honestly, for Canadians like me, that's practically charity pricing. Though Quantum switching from normal tokens to gacha coin was controversial to say the least. We'll get to the drama later. This Quantum branch has 2 maimai cabinets running version 1.60-D at the time of recording. And overall, they're pretty actually solid. The buttons feel tactile, touch sensors are responsive, and gameplay feels consistent overall. Though the screens are definitely a little dirty. White glove players, like me, consider this your hazard warning. Queue times here were also basically non-existent, at least at the time I was there. Even though the arcade itself had decent foot traffic, the maimai area rarely got crowded outside of the busier afternoon hours, and if you need a break between songs or having an emotional breakdowns, there's a nearby branch in front of it, plus other rhythm games and I guess arcade games around like DDR, Sound Voltex, Claw Machine, and this random bowling party game that has a nice blue screen in it. Overall, this branch is honestly pretty solid. The only real downside is that both cabinets were still running version 1.60-D during recording. Although, while I was recording this voiceover, I got a notification that both cabinets are running finally the latest version. The funny part is that they updated the first cabinet, then waited weeks before updating the second one. Wouldn't it have made more sense to update them both at the same time? Oh, and maybe wipe the screen before playing. Despite its quirks, I give this arcade an A tier. Next up, Quantum at SM City Santa Mesa. And since this is another giant chain mall, the overall setup and amenities of this mall are pretty much what I expect at this point. The arcade itself only has one maimai cabinet though, so if a queue starts forming, expect your rhythm game career to temporarily become a waiting simulator. This branch is also smaller overall, meaning there aren't really any benches inside while waiting, though thankfully there's a food court just a few steps away if you need to recover physically, emotionally, or financially between sets. The cabinet here was running version 1.61, which explains why my aim card kept screaming at me about being tied to an older maimai version. I could have updated my profile immediately, but honestly, I was too lazy to deal with it at the time. As for camera quality, it actually felt pretty comparable to SM City Marikina. Buttons were responsive, the touch sensor worked well, and surprisingly enough, the screen was actually clean. Then again, the arcade had literally just opened, so somebody probably speedrun the morning cleaning routine right before I arrived. Still, credit where credit's due. Overall, this branch feels like a lot of SM Marikina, just smaller and running a slightly newer version, but more importantly, it also has a taiko cabinet nearby, which automatically increases my happiness stat by at least 20%. Easy A tier. Next stop, Timezone at Robinson's Place, Manila. Now, I had never actually visited Robinson's Place, Manila before, so finding the Timezone branch somehow turned into its own side quest. And honestly, this mall is huge, way bigger than most Robinson's malls around Metro Manila, though Robinson's Galleria is still even larger than that though. Now, remember earlier when I mentioned relying on both the community-maintained cabinet list and the official all.net locator? Yeah, this is exactly why. At the time, my dumbass was accidentally using a horribly outdated branch list, last updated on July 13, 2025, and it still claimed Robinson's Manila had a maimai cabinet. So naturally, without questioning my life decisions too hard and also doubting all.net for some reason, I confidently entered the mall, searched for Timezone, wandered around Timezone like a lost tourist, and spent several minutes trying to locate a cabinet. And after finding absolutely nothing, I finally asked one of the staff members where the maimai machine was, and that's when reality hit me like a truck.
Tanong lang po, may maimai pa rin po kayo dito?
Wala na sir, nakapulaw pa. Nalipat na siya sa Manila base sir.
Manila, sa Ayala, Ayala po?
MOA.
MOA! Sige, salamat.
Turns out the cabinet had already been moved to another mall. Past me's live reaction to realizing I had traveled all the way here for literally nothing was not exactly family friendly.
So I'm gonna say this once in my own language, but for this situation, na naman to. Bad trip, but it is what it is.
This one was completely my fault. I should just check the updated maimai Philippine Discord list alongside all.net instead of trusting Asian archaeological documents from 2025. So unfortunately, we're just going to take this branch and lead it directly into F tier because screw you for wasting my time, while collectively pretending it was never part of the route in the first place. After that disastrous trip, we headed a bit further north towards Quantum at SM City, Manila. This branch has two maimai cabinets, and while Cab 1 looks perfectly normal, Cab 2 was something, because there was literally a hole at the top right of the cabinet. Like, seriously, what happened here? Did someone choke a master chart so hard they entered a rage-induced backstory? And one of the switches also had a visible crack, though thankfully it seemed to be cosmetic more than anything serious. Now, unlike SM City Santa Mesa, but very much like SM City Marikina, the screens here were dirty. Actually, no, not dirty. Really dirty. After just a few rounds, my white glove somehow developed this mysterious brown maroon stain that made it look like I had been excavating ancient artifacts instead of playing rhythm games, but to be fair, I did visit it in the afternoon, so the machines had probably already survived several hours of continuous abuse by then. But still, ugh. And honestly, the rough condition doesn't stop at the maimai cabinets either. The Trinitum cabinet was surprisingly decent, but the taiko machine across from maimai looked like it had fought in several wars and lost all of them. I'm pretty sure those drums either need a full replacement or a respectful retirement ceremony at this point, especially considering it's one of the older taiko versions. On the bright side though, this branch was running version 1.61-F, making it the most up-to-date setup I had played on that day so far. The buttons and touch sensors responsiveness were also surprisingly solid overall, and somehow there was barely any queue again. A few players here and there sure, but nowhere near crowded. So overall, if you're in Manila and just want to play maimai, this branch absolutely gets the job done. Just maybe don't stare too hard at the battle damage cabinet or the slowly dying taiko machine directly across from it. This one lands firmly in the borderline C and D tier. I'll pick C. This goes to the C tier. Next stop, Podium at SM City San Lazaro. At this point, the pattern is becoming too obvious. Every SM mall with maimai we visited so far somehow hides it inside a Quantum arcade. Compared to the previous branches, this arcade felt way more crowded, Machines packed tightly together, people everywhere, noise bouncing off every corner. The entire place basically felt like a sensory overload with flashing lights. Surprisingly though, despite the packed arcade, the maimai queue itself was still pretty manageable, so lucky me. This location only has one cabinet running version 1.61-F, but thankfully the machine itself was still fairly solid overall. Buttons felt responsive, touch sensor worked perfectly, and gameplay was smooth enough. Though I did notice occasional display ghosting and random flashbang moments from hitting the button, not exactly game breaking, but definitely noticeable. Also, there's visible dirt trapped inside parts of the cabinet, so it adds character, I guess? Nearby, there's also Chunitum and DDR, so rhythm game players still have something else to do while waiting. Overall, this branch feels cramped, crowded, slightly chaotic, and mildly overstimulating, but still perfectly serviceable if you just want to have a quick maimai session before escaping back into Manila traffic. This one lands in B tier. Next and very quick stop, Quantum at SM City Grand Central. This newer mall is absolutely massive with modern amenities and that thing over there. And inside of that Quantum were 3 maimai cabinets, which is a first on this trip, running version 1.61-F. Unfortunately, I wasn't the only one who found them. By the time I arrived around 5 PM, the queue looked like people were lining up for concert tickets, hence I didn't play it on this location. Thankfully, the waiting system was organized, there were seats nearby, and the cabinets themselves were reportedly in good shape, though one button was recently fixed on one of the cabinets, while Cab 3's Cornstalk occasionally decide it doesn't believe in capitalism no more. The verdict? Come early if you want to play alone, or come later if you want to make friends in line. A very solid setup that's simply suffering from too much success on this location. Easy A tier. Next stop, Quantum at SM North Edsa. Just east of Monumento and deeper into the never-ending chaos vortex known as Edsa, we arrive at my childhood mall. As a kid, this mall was the place for me. The sacred location where my allowance money from my mom mysteriously transferred into toys, foods, and arcade credits at alarming speeds. Coming back here after years away felt weirdly nostalgic, and somehow my remaining childhood instincts still activated long enough to guide me directly toward the Quantum Arcade. Oh, here we go! Interestingly though, the maimai cabinets weren't nearly as crowded as I expected. Both machines were occupied when I arrived, but I was basically next in line almost immediately. The 2 cabinets, both running version 1.61-F, are tucked away into a surprisingly cramped corner of the arcade. And honestly, for a mall this absurdly huge, I genuinely expected at least 3 cabinets instead of just these 2 lonely cabinets fighting for survival in the corner. Cabinet quality here is mixed. Cab 1 had a headphone jack that looked like somebody basically tried to shove it back into the machine using brute force. Somehow, it still worked perfectly fine though, so whatever. Meanwhile, Cab 2 decided to experience some mechanical failure mid-session when button 5 literally got stuck during someone's playthrough. But huge respect to the staff here because they jumped on the repair almost immediately. Some players also mentioned occasional button misfire on my cab, though personally I didn't experience any too disastrous outside of my natural rhythm game incompetence. Overall, SM North Edsa's maimai setup is solid enough. Just expect on this arcade, especially at that time I'm recording, crowds, cramped spacing, and the occasional button experiencing some midlife crisis mid-song. And yes, I'm probably biased because this is my childhood mall, but I don't really care. This is my video. This one is going to A tier. Last stop, Timezone at TriNoma. And yes, TriNoma literally stands for Triangle North Mall, named after the triangle intersection formed by Edsa, Mindanao Avenue, and North Avenue. Now, if you're coming from SM North Edsa like I did, good luck. For 2 malls sitting practically beside each other, the pedestrian connection somehow still feels like an unfinished side quest. But remember that MRT7 and the North Triangle Common Station is still being constructed as we speak, so this is just a temporary issue. Anyways, TriNoma was also one of my childhood malls, meaning this place carries a lot of memories. Younger me spent an irresponsible amount of money into toys, food, and temporary happiness. Even this open space triggered flashbacks of random cartoon stage shows and mall performances I used to watch as a kid. The Timezone branch itself is upstairs, and honestly, this might be one of the biggest Timezones I've ever seen in the Philippines. And the moment when I walk in, boom! Another giant maimai queue. But surprisingly, a very organized one. And there's actually a good reason why it's pretty packed. So let's talk about Timezone pricing for a second because honestly, this system is pretty solid. A single maimai session costs 60 Powerload credits, which you think is expensive, but unlike some other arcades, Timezone actually gives bonus credits on top of whatever amount you load. For example, load 1,000 pesos and you get an extra 450 bonus credits, giving you 1,450 total Powerload credits. And the more you load, the bigger the bonus gets. It gets even better if you use a Timezone Fun app for app-exclusive deals or if you happen to visit during one of their random promos, and sometimes they even run extra bonuses for new customers like me. So using the 1,000 pesos example, 1,450 credits for 1,000 pesos means each credit costs around 0.69 pesos.
Nice.
Multiple that by 60 credit maimai session cost, and suddenly each game only costs around 42 pesos or basically 1 Canadian dollar, which is honestly kind of insane because that's actually cheaper than Quantum's standard 50 peso setup. While spectating the queues here, I ended up chatting with two players named George and Harry, who gave me some really interesting insight into the local maimai scene. Earlier, I mentioned how Quantum switching over the gacha coin caused some controversy, right? Well, according to George, some players basically started self-boycotting Quantum afterward and migrated over to Timezone instead because sessions end up cheaper overall, machine maintenance is usually better, and staff tend to respond faster when cabins break. Which honestly explains why Timezone branches tend to attract more experienced players and much busier queues compared to your average Quantum location. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to play properly here myself because the queue was massive and it was already getting late. But both cabins were running version 1.61-F and pretty much everyone agreed that the maintenance quality here was generally solid. Buttons felt good, touch sensor were responsive, and apparently the screens actually get cleaned regularly. We had some casual conversation, exchanged contacts, chatted again for a bit more, and eventually said our goodbyes before heading our separate ways. But, I don't know why I missed this, but this is the funniest part actually, just stick with me. While browsing the maimai Philippines Discord later that night, I discovered that apparently Cabinet Player 2 has a giant roll on the top right side of the cabinet. Like seriously, how does that even happen? But apparently Timezone eventually fixed it afterward, so huge kudos to them for actually responding to the damage instead of pretending that hole was just additional ventilation. Looking at you, SM Manila. Overall, Timezone TriNoma easily had the most welcoming atmosphere out of every arcade I visited that day, and honestly, that kind of atmosphere matters a lot. Even with the cabinet damage incident, the overall experience here was genuinely fantastic. The players here were chill, the machines were maintained properly, and the long-term pricing is honestly kind of cracked once you understand the Powerload math. So with all that considered, I think we officially found our first S-tier location. And with that, day 1 finally comes to an end. Time to head back to my safe house, recover mentally, physically, and financially, then reconvene tomorrow for day 2 of this incredibly stupid adventure. Let's kick off day 2 by heading north into Quezon City, where our first destination is Quantum at SM City Novaliches. Since I arrived way too early before the mall even opened, I ended up making a tactical stop at Jollibee right in front of the mall for a pre-maimai lunch. Now, spiritually recharged and financially prepared to make more terrible rhythm game decisions, it was finally time to head inside. And this is where things immediately fall apart. Apparently, this mall has 3 separate Quantum branches, 1 upstairs, 2 downstairs. Because my dumbass somehow failed to properly read the all.net location listing beforehand, I naturally walked into the upstairs branch first and started searching for the maimai like a lost NPC doing a side quest. At one point, I even asked a staff member if they even had maimai there.
Wala kayong maimai na dito sa Novaliches po? Maimai? Meron kayong parang maimai machine dito sa Quantum po o wala na po? Wala na.
So naturally, I did what every rhythm gamer does in times of crisis. I asked the maimai Philippines community for help. But the funniest part? Literally moments after someone replied confirming that yes, there was a cabinet in Novaliches, I randomly turned in a corner downstairs and there it was.
Oh wait, I think that's it. Wait, I found it. Never mind, I think that's another Quantum. Wait.
And somehow, there was no queue either too as well. This lone cabinet was running version 1.61-F, and since some later locations on this trip were already updated, I figured out this was probably the perfect time to finally migrate my profile over. As for the machine itself, it's basically your standard quantum-owned maimai cabinet. It's slightly dusty, had some mildly questionable aesthetics, but it's somehow still perfectly functional. Buttons felt responsive, the touch sensor worked well, and overall gameplay was solid. Though some players mentioned that the P2 side looked a little bit dim, and after checking my footage later, yeah, they weren't lying. Yeah, it's a little bit fun. But that minor lighting issue currently was enough to stop me from full comboing songs anyway. There also aren't really any chairs or waiting areas nearby, which is a little bit annoying, but since the cabinet is placed near the mall's open common area, you can at least walk around aimlessly while you wait. Overall, this place feels like the most standard quantum maimai experience imaginable, and if you're lucky like me, basically no queue at all. Though that last word is probably because I arrived at opening time. Just make sure you go to the correct quantum branch before visiting.
Okay, so it did say it's second floor, but there's ground floor?
But stupidity aside, this one gets an A tier. Next stop, Quantum at SM City Fairview. SM City Fairview itself is absolutely gigantic, so it has all the amenities that you need. And hidden somewhere inside this massive complex is another quantum arcade featuring one singular maimai cabinet. And beside it, a single chair. Thankfully though, the cabinet was updated to 1.6F-F, meaning fresh songs to grind and new charts to destroy my wallet. So honestly, I'll take those instead. This trip became instantly more memorable when I met another maimai player named Jared, and man, this guy had energy. We spent the session talking about maimai strategies, rankings, random arcade stuff, and generally just vibing. And then came the trial. This random little child woke up with a higher rating than both me and Jared combined and proceeded to play master charts like she was casually breathing oxygen. Meanwhile, me and Jared were over there fighting for our lives trying to survive Master 11 charts. Kids nowadays are terrifying, to be honest with you. The cabinet itself was surprisingly solid like any quantum branches out there. The buttons still had the nice tactile feeling without turning into mush, and the touch sensor handled all of my panic slapping during our master sessions without issue. Compared to some other quantum branches, this machine honestly felt pretty good, especially after surviving that SM Manila cabinet incident. That thing still owes me an emotional compensation. One thing I did notice, the button lights weren't lighting up at all. Whether someone flipped a switch, the LEDs gave up, or both cameras decided to coordinate their failures, I have no idea. It doesn't affect gameplay though, so whatever. Overall, this was probably one of the best time arcade visits of the whole trip.
You're one of the most chill person I have ever encountered with.
The place wasn't too crowded, the machine was good, and I met another player to hang out with. The arcade itself is pretty standard for a quantum branch, though having other games like Pokemon Mesa Star nearby does help pass the time while waiting for the cabinet or waiting for access to the lone singular chair. There's gotta be another one for sure.
I will sit down.
But in the end, we were all there for the same reason, to play rhythm games and emotionally suffer together. And honestly, seeing Jared FC our final set together was probably the perfect ending to the session.
Yes! Let's go! Let's go, man!
Good job, Jared! Just determining the quality of the cabs and the location itself only, despite having too much fun, I'll give this location an upper A tier. Next stop of the day, Timezone at UP Town Center. UP Town Center is another Ayala Mall's property like TriNoma, and unlike most malls in this video though, this place has a really nice open air layout which honestly made it feel way more relaxed. And up to the second floor, we found our next Timezone. Size-wise, this branch is pretty modest compared to the other Timezones we visited, with the usual collection of claw machines, taiko cabinet, a pretty neat bowling alley, a billiards section, and one singular maimai cabinet. This cabinet was still running version 1.60, which is pretty old at this point, similar to SM City Marikina, meaning my newly updated aim profile wouldn't work for it. Amazing. The first thing I noticed though was on player 2's side. There's this vertical line running up and down the inner screen. My best guess, somebody probably went a little too hard on the buttons and managed to press the inner housing into the display. Thankfully, it's mostly cosmetic damage, so the cabinet is still perfectly playable. Buttons and touch sensor quality? Honestly, it's just standard maimai. buttons felt tactile without turning into mush, and the touch sensor registered my panic slapping without any issues. And hey, another FC. But the funniest part is that the cabinet sits on top on this elevated hollow wooden flooring, so every bass drop vibrates directly through your feet while playing. And also, there's some nearby chairs to relax on while others play. Overall, if you can ignore the vertical screen line and enjoy your arcade sessions with bonus earthquake effects, this cabinet is still pretty decent to play on. Since based on some reports that it has been updated to 1.6F-F already a week later, it's an A tier for me. Now arriving at Timezone at SM Megamall, and mega it definitely is. Anyways, after checking the digital directory, walking around aimlessly following its questionable directions, accidentally going upstairs, remembering there was an arcade section in the basement, then going downstairs again, I finally found it. Well, technically I found 3 arcades sitting beside each other, which is World of Fun, Tom's World, and the one I actually cared about, Timezone, which was somehow compressed into a tiny space with a singular but surprisingly packed maimai cabinet practically sitting outside the arcade itself like it's proudly showcasing itself to the crowd. This cabinet was running version 1.61-F, one of the latest version available for international cabinets at the time. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to properly play on it because the queue was absolutely packed, but I did manage to interrogate, politely talk to some nearby players. According to them, the buttons still feel great despite years of rhythm gamers treating them like accessory equipment, and the touch sensors are still responsive too. As for the arcade itself, yeah, this place is pretty tight. Timezone somehow crammed an entire arcade ecosystem into a relatively tiny space, so the whole area constantly feels crowded. Still, despite the cramped layout, the actual maimai experience here seems genuinely solid overall, and since this is Timezone, there's a huge variety of other games nearby if you need a break. And if you somehow get bored here, there are literally competing arcades directly beside it. Overall, while the arcade itself feels cramped, the actual maimai experience here is genuinely pretty neat. Borderline A tier. Just a short walk from SM Megamall, actually no, that was a full-on cardio session. Eventually, we arrived at Q Power Station in the Podium. Now, if you're wondering what Q Power even is, it's basically Quantum trying to make their own Timezone competitor. Each maimai session here costs 60 credits, just like Timezone, and the arcade has 2 card types, Zap and Yayo. Zap is the premium card with a 5% session discount plus slightly better bonus credits, while Yayo is the standard option. The staff handed me a Zap card, so I loaded 100 pesos and got 120 total credits after bonuses. Using the same advance Canadian trying to justify arcade spending math from earlier, each maimai session came out around 48 Philippine pesos or around $1.20 Canadian, and that's with a 5% discount, which is basically Quantum pricing. While it is cheaper than Quantum in theory, Timezone still wins in price and value-wise of each session. Now, this arcade actually has 3 maimai cabinets, all running version 1.61-F, and most importantly, seats. Finally, my legs were already filing formal complaints after a day and a half of non-stop arcade tourism. There's also 2 Chinitum cabinets beside them running Crossverse X, so naturally, I played a quick session while waiting for the queue to clear out. After my Chinitum side quest, it was finally my turn on maimai. And the first thing I noticed immediately, this screen felt slippery, like really slippery. Compared to the previous cabinets that had a bit more friction, this one felt like somebody polished the screen with butter. I genuinely couldn't tell if it was the screen surface itself or my gloves had simply reached their breaking point after a day and a half of reviews. Thankfully though, it didn't really affect gameplay much since I still managed to snag another FC. Nice one, me. Beyond the accidental ice rink screen, the touch sensors and the buttons on my Cam 3 side work perfectly fine, though players did mention some weird quirks on the other cabinets. Cab 1 occasionally flashbangs people when hitting buttons, and the cabinet beside me had some few buttons getting stuck. So honestly, I think I just rolled the lucky cabinet spawn. Arcade-wise, Q Power Station feels pretty similar to Quantum, just with a more modern aesthetic. Overall, this Q Power branch is honestly pretty neat. Pricing is a slightly bit better than regular Quantum, though still not quite as good value-wise as Timezone. The cabinets have some weird quirks, mine included, but the overall experience was still solid. And hey, since this is the Podium, you could probably go buy some Nike shoes while waiting for your turn too. Meanwhile, I'm over here rhythm game maxing instead. Easy A tier. Just another trek away from the Podium, we arrive at another Q-Power branch, this time inside Shrangri-la Plaza. The mall itself is honestly real nice, and since it's connected to the renowned Edsa Shrangri-La Manila, the whole place screams slightly out of my tax bracket levels of bougie. Fancy ceiling ornaments, classy interiors, and that older upscale mall vibe that somehow still works very well. Though finding Q-Power itself turned into a side quest I absolutely did not sign up for. Halfway through wandering around, I realized I was using the chinitumall.net locations instead of the maimai ones.
This is different, never mind.
Amazing start already. Then the mall directory somehow made things more confusing, so I spent a good amount of time walking around this giant mall like a lost child looking for their parent at the grocery store.
Okay, I'm actually lost right now, man.
After what felt like ages, I finally found the arcade. In my defense, this mall is massive and built like a labyrinth. This Q-Power branch has two maimai cabinets running version 1.61-F, both completely occupied when I arrive. Same story as the previous Timezone in SM Megamall, no play for me because I was running out of time, the place was packed, and my legs were already threatening to resign from all the arcade hopping, and we still have places to go this day. I did talk to some players there though, and they said the buttons and touch sensors were still pretty decent overall. Compared to the other Q-Power branch, this one looks larger from the outside and actually the inside itself as well, but the actual maimai area feels a little bit cramped. Besides maimai, they also have chunitum and most importantly, my beloved taiko. And there's other offerings if you're into it. Overall, despite the tighter setup, this still seems like a pretty solid place to play. Just make sure your navigation skills are better than mine, unless you also want to accidentally turn your arcade trip into a mall exploration simulator.
Wow, wait, oh my lordy.
Another A tier. One grab out of Shangri-La Plaza later, and we arrive at another Quantum branch, this time at Greenhills Shopping Center. Not gonna lie, this place surprised me. As a kid, I always thought of Greenhills as just one of the giant flea market full of cheap clothes, bootleg DVDs, toys, and questionable tech accessories. But apparently, this place also has some fancy side now. For 23 years, I have been deceived. But thankfully, Quantum itself was pretty easy to find since Greenhills has a dedicated entertainment area upstairs. Walking in, I immediately spotted a maimai cabinet being occupied by some absolutely cracked players, then realized there was another cabinet behind it, completely free for me to use. Nice! We are so back. This branch has two maimai cabinets running version 1.61-F, and because this is Quantum, we are back to using those gacha coins again. Thankfully, I still had some leftovers from the previous location, so straight into testing we go. Based on my advanced testing procedures, it felt like your usual solid Quantum maimai setup. Clicky buttons, responsive touch sensors, and overall pretty clean too. The screen worked perfectly fine while I proceeded to absolutely screw the ending of a Hatsune Miku chart. Oh wow, 95%. Yeah, that wasn't the machine's fault, that was entirely a skill issue on my end. At least I managed to get some FCs afterwards, so the session redeemed itself a little. Hehe. Funny rating number obtained too, so we take those. And once you're done with maimai, there's also chunitum and taiko nearby waiting for further financial destruction. Overall, this location feels like a cleaner version of most Quantum branches. Decent arcade lineup, solid maimai setup, and honestly a pretty fun mall to walk around if you like flea market energy mixed with modern shopping center vibes. The only real downside is actually getting here if you don't know Manila transportation anymore. Still though, easy A tier. Next stop for the day is another Q-Power branch, this time at Powerplant Mall. And yes, the mall is actually built on the former site of a thermal power plant, hence the name. Now, Powerplant Mall absolutely screams rich people energy. The exterior alone already feels like some high-end western shopping center, and inside somehow it gets even fancier. Luxury stores everywhere, expensive looking interiors, and tenants that makes you instinctively check your bank account before entering. This is definitely out of my price range, even as a Canadian. But thankfully, you know what isn't expensive? Playing maimai. This Q-Power branch has two maimai cabinets running version 1.61-F, and since it's Q-Power again, it's 60 credits normally or 57 with the premium card. Bless these arcades for actually keeping the game updated. As for the machines themselves, Cab 1 Player 1, the one I played on, felt pretty standard compared to the other good Quantum setups I tried so far. Buttons were tactile and satisfying to smack, and the touch sensor handled my spam-heavy gameplay just fine. There were reports about Cab 2 occasionally deciding whether your inputs deserved rights or not, since some buttons apparently miss hits sometimes. It's not constant though, more like a random lottery mechanic added for free. The arcade itself is pretty decent too. They're sitting nearby for tired rhythm gamers waiting for their turn to violently assault these machines, and aside from maimai, there's Taiko, DDR, and even Dance Rush Stardom, which I've mostly only seen through doom-scrolling reels before, so seeing one in person was actually pretty neat. Overall, it's another solid Q-Power branch, updated maimai cabs, good atmosphere, decent game lineup, and enough space to not feel cramped. The only downside is honestly just getting here without a car or proper knowledge of Metro Manila transportation. But at this point, I'm slowly accepting my fate, and apparently I'll need to accept it even more tomorrow. And yeah, this mall radiates generational wealth. Easy 8 tier. Finally, the last trip on this day is Timezone at Glorietta 4. Okay Otaku, that ain't 4, that's f***ing 5. Are you dumb? 1, that's rude. And 2, that's where my Grab dropped me off since it's convenient for both of us. So literal adventuring we go, and behind me is Glorietta 4, so this almost counts, so shut up. Glorietta is actually a complex of 5 malls, and these are owned by Ayala. There are multiple time zones in Glorietta, but surely we know that we are in the correct section, and we learned our mistake from the SM Novaliches incident, right? Hehehe, no. Somehow I didn't. While this friendly concierge staff was able to direct me to a time zone, something was wrong when I reached the time zone since it is pretty tad small. And after getting a confused look when I asked if there's maimai in this arcade,
Tanong lang po, saan yung maimai dito po sa time zone?
Nole po.
Yung maimai?
Maimai po.
Opo.
What do you maimai, sir?
this confirms my doubt. However, kudos to this person, they were able to direct me to one of their biggest one they have in this mall, and in fact, I was in the wrong section.
Kala ko kasi meron siya dito sa Glorietta 4 po eh.
2 pa lang kami, sir.
Oh!
Ang 4 po, nasa cinema po. Pag
So...
diretso niyo po dito sa may food choice po, escalator dyan pa ako, katabi lang po siya ng cinema.
Off to another good start, eh? After walking endlessly on this honestly amazing and very vast mall of this, I almost got lost this time again, but I was able to trust my instinct and just to follow the signs.
It's pretty good.
I guess. I went upstairs and this area is pretty damn awesome and jaw-dropping, and lo and behold, my time zone pop up. Now, let's find that maimai cab. Oh, there we go. The area is literally the perfect snug tight fit for exactly 2 maimai cabinet that they have over here. And oh yeah, these are running version 1.61-F, so another kudos. While I did not intend to play on this cab since you can see it's pretty packed for a night session like this, I gotta say, the atmosphere is like that time zone in TriNoma. Not only they have seats for peeps waiting for their turn, they have proper vapor-based queue system to write down who's next. And oh wow, there's free water bottles. That's very nice of them. Obviously, I did not grab one of those because these are for the players who actually played the cab, but massive respect to this community for caring out each other, especially how hot these sessions can be. And Manila in general is. Cab quality is pretty good. I asked one of the players, I sorry forgot your name, and he said that buttons felt like just any time zone maimai cabinet. Responsive, not mushy, and the screens aren't slippery. The only issue is the cab sometimes go offline, but it's pretty rare. Arcade-wise, this time zone is hella big. It's similar to TriNoma with its offerings, and there's a lot of arcade games around the area and claw station for your claw game needs. And this is probably scratching the surface, so if you want to wait out the queue or done with maimai, this place doesn't bore you out. Overall, despite getting lost in the vastness of this mall, I'd say this rivals or probably complements TriNoma on the best community atmosphere, great quality, great arcade variety, and of course, great mall variety to roam around. A S tier for this lad. And this concludes day 2 of going around Metro Manila hunting down every single maimai cabinet we could find. So, what now? Well, naturally, we decided to engage in a little bit of capitalism at the local fully book and pick up some anime merch. Oh, f**k. Goodbye 125 Canadian dollars. You will be remembered. Wait, where was I again? Ah yes, day 2 done, and we're heading back to the base with fewer dollars, more anime goods, and absolutely no regrets. Probably. See you tomorrow for our final day. It's day 3, the last day, the final stretch, the last reckoning, the last battle, the final chapter of this completely reasonable and financially responsible quest to find every maimai machine I can. My legs hurt, my wallet hurts, my sleep schedule is probably filing a formal complaint, but somehow we're still standing. So, with one final day left in Metro Manila, one thought remains. Fuck it, we ball! Let's go find some maimai. And don't worry, today's special, we're not skipping anything. No, I'll come back later. No, maybe next trip. No, the queue is too long. We're playing every remaining location today. No exceptions. If there's a maimai machine there, we're touching it. With consent, of course. And that consent starts at Alabang Town Center, specifically at Timezone. First thing in the morning, literally before the mall even opened. But first, water. If day 3 was going to be the final boss, then hydration was non-negotiable, especially in the Philippines. Now, Alabang Town Center is one of the farthest locations I visited during this entire trip. It's down near the southern edge of Metro Manila, closer to the provinces of Cavite and Laguna, and the surrounding area definitely has that upscale suburban vibe. The mall itself is pretty nice though. There are a few stores that are definitely above my tax bracket, but seeing a Toys R Us here generally caught my attention. As someone living in North America where my local one recently closed down, seeing one in the wild felt like spotting an endangered species. Also found in the wild, a decently sized Timezone. It's smaller than some of the giant Timezone branches we've seen so far, but it still has all the usual offerings. Crane games, a VR paraglider attraction, and most importantly, the reason we're here, a pair of maimai cabinets sitting completely empty. See? Arriving early actually paid off for once. The cabinets themselves look pretty standard for Timezone. Same 60 credit pricing, same generally well-maintained appearance, and thankfully no major issues on the machine I played. Player 2 wasn't quite as lucky though. One of its buttons was lifting out enough that you could see the internals underneath, but thankfully it still worked fine, so it was more of a cosmetic issue rather than anything game-breaking. Gameplay-wise, it was exactly what I expect for a good Timezone setup. The buttons felt responsive, the touch sensors handled slides properly, and nothing really got in the way of playing, which, after some of the machines I've encountered on this trip, is honestly a compliment. Plus, they're running version 1.61-F, so that's another plus for me. There's also a bench nearby which is greatly appreciated because by day 3, my legs were operating purely out of spite. Overall, this is a solid maimai location with well-maintained cabinets and comfortable surroundings. The only real downside is actually getting here. If you can survive the journey south, you'll be rewarded with a great place to play. Easy A tier. It would probably be even higher like S tier if reaching it wasn't such a pain in the ass. Just over 25 minutes of walking under Manila's absolutely devilish sun later, we arrive at another Quantum branch, this time at SM Southmall. From the outside, SM Southmall looks fairly modest, then you walk in and realize this place is actually huge. I barely explored malls in the southern part of Metro Manila, even when I was younger, so the experience felt like I was a tourist. After some wandering through the surprisingly confusing cross-shaped layout and asking security for directions,
Tanong lang po, saan po yung Quantum po dito?
Dun sa dulo.
Sa dulo pa po? Sige, tama.
I eventually found the arcade. This Quantum is a little bit smaller than some of the branches we've visited so far, but it still has most of the usual offerings, including that Pokemon game I've been mentioning throughout this journey. More importantly though, it has 2 completely empty maimai cabinets waiting for me. At first glance, both cabinets look to be in great shape. You can immediately tell that they cater to rhythm gamers because they actually have phone holders for recording gameplay and baskets for storing bags nearby. I somehow forgot to mention those earlier in the trip, but they're generally nice additions. One of the basket cover looked a little bit broken at first, but a little bit adjustment later and it was perfectly usable again. Both cabinets were running version 1.61-F, another welcome sight, and after my highly scientific inspection method of staring at the machine for a few seconds, I couldn't spot any major cosmetic damage. Gameplay wise, it felt exactly like what I'd expect from a well-maintained Quantum machine. The buttons were crisp, responsive, and satisfying to smack repeatedly, while the touch sensor registered inputs perfectly fine. The only thing I noticed was a weird crusty patch near the top right edge of the screen on the cabinet I played. Whether it was old plastic residue, grime, or the remains of someone's spilled soft drink from 3 years ago, I have absolutely no idea. Beyond that, it's just another solid Quantum maimai setup. The arcade itself is smaller, so the game selection isn't as crazy as some of the larger arcades, but it still has enough to keep you occupied. The mall is also surprisingly pleasant to walk around, with plenty of places to eat if you need to recharge before continuing your arcade pilgrimage. Overall, this is another easy A tier. Next stop, Quantum at SM City BF Parañaque. The BF comes from BF Homes, the massive residential community nearby, which explains why this feels more like a neighborhood mall rather than one of the SM's normal mall. It has the usual department store, supermarket, shops, and restaurants, but something felt missing. After wandering around for a while, I finally realized what it was: the food court. Most SM malls have one, but this place instead has a large open area that feels oddly underused. Thankfully, Quantum isn't missing. This branch is larger than the previous one, packed with crane games, gacha machines, and other wallet-destroying attractions. But more importantly, it had a lone maimai cabinet running version 1.61-F completely free for me to use. Basically, the machine was in good shape. The buttons felt responsive, the touch sensor worked well, and gameplay was perfectly functional. Unfortunately, there was a noticeable amount of screen ghosting and flashing whenever the buttons were pressed or the screen was touched. It wasn't enough to ruin my session. I even managed to get an FC+, but it became increasingly distracting on denser charts. Overall, the mall feels somewhat underwhelming, while the arcade is surprisingly solid. As for the maimai cabinet, it's playable and mechanically sound, but the ghosting and flashbang issues drags down the experience. Not the worst machine I've ever encountered, but difficult to fully recommend until that issue gets fixed. C tier. We are officially out of the southern reaches of Metro Manila and have been slingshotted straight into Bonifacio Global City. Our destination, Quantum at Uptown Mall. And no, not UP Town Center, Uptown Mall. Get used to it. Now, BGC is probably the textbook definition of bougie as hell. Western-style architecture, luxury stores everywhere, and enough high-end establishments to remind you that some people make more money in a week than I'd spent on this entire arcade adventure. After a bit of walking, we arrived at Quantum. The arcade itself is actually pretty small, so small that some of the games have spilled out into the entrance. Not ideal, but you got to Not ideal, but you gotta expect the hustle. Unfortunately, there are no seats nearby, so if you're waiting for your turn, your legs are on their own. As for the main attraction, there are two maimai cabinets here, and thankfully one side was completely free. Both machines were running version 1.61-F, and after my patent-pending world-class inspection process, both cabinets look to be in pretty good shape with no obvious issues. Gameplay-wise, it is exactly what I expect from a Quantum-owned machine. The buttons were tactile, the touch sensor responded perfectly, and everything felt well maintained. In fact, the cabinet treated me so well that I managed to pull off another FC Plus with 100.81% accuracy. Now that's the good stuff. The machines were also pretty clean, which is always appreciated. Overall, this feels like another solid Quantum location. The lack of seating and the effort required to get here are minor annoyance, but once you're actually in front of the machine, it's a great place to play. Plus, BGC itself is a nice area to wander around in, assuming your wallet can survive it. Another easy A tier. From the skyscrapers of BGC, we now head toward the seaside for the final stretch of this adventure. Only 2 locations remain, and our next stop is Timezone at Ayala Mall's Manila Bay. You can basically describe Ayala Mall's Manila Bay as Ayala's answer to SM Mall of Asia. Different sections are themed around different countries, so you'll find areas inspired by Japan, China, and several others. It's not quite as glamorous or crowded as MOA, but once you step outside, you'll really appreciate how massive the complex is. There's even an indoor area that occasionally hosts basketball events and other activities. But we're not here to shop, we're here for maimai. And eventually, we arrive at what is probably one of the largest Timezone branches featured on this trip. Bowling? Check. Billiards? Check. A ridiculous amount of arcade games? Check. Maimai? Also check. Well, singular maimai cabinet. I was honestly expecting 2, but here's a fun fact. Remember the Robinson's Manila escapade from earlier?
May maimai pa rin po kayo dito?
Wala na sir, nakapulaw pa. Nalipat na siya sa Manila Bay sir.
Yeah, this is where that cabinet ended up. During the wait, I ended up chatting with 2 players who were relatively new to maimai but were already completely hooked. We talk about the game, share some tips, watch each other's sessions, and generally just kill time talking rhythm game nonsense. Not gonna lie, moments like this are part of why I enjoy these trips. Seeing people genuinely having fun, helping each other out, and collectively suffering through difficult charts is always a good vibe. So if you are that person that I talk to, salamat ulit sa kwentuhan at sa konting gaguhan. I completely forgot your names, but you know who you are. After they headed off and it was finally my turn, I ended up playing alongside another newer player named Alec before passing through my session. Cab quality wise, it was pretty decent. The machine was noticeably dusty both inside and out, but aside from that, I couldn't spot any major cosmetic damage during my world-class inspection process. And also, this cab is running version 1.61-F. Gameplay felt exactly what I expect from a good Timezone cabinet. The buttons were tactile without feeling mushy, the touch sensor worked perfectly fine, and everything felt responsive. What really makes this location stand out is everything surrounding the machine. The arcade is absolutely massive with enough attractions to keep you occupied for hours if you're waiting for a turn. The mall itself is also noticeably quieter than many of the locations we visited, making a great place if you prefer a more relaxed atmosphere. And honestly, the random interactions with other players ended up making this stop even more memorable than the machine itself. For that reason, this location gets an S tier. Alright, we arrived, the penultimate stop, the end of the line, the terminus of this 3-day adventure across Metro Manila. Our final destination, Q Power at SM Mall of Asia, one of the largest malls in the Philippines, one of the most recognizable landmarks in Metro Manila, the busiest thing I've ever witnessed in my entire lifetime, and a place so massive that first-time visitors can probably get lost without even trying. And honestly, if there was ever a mall fit to host the grand finale of this adventure, it would be this one. One last arcade, one last maimai session, one last chance for my wallet to suffer. Let's do this. Alright Q Power, you got everything a regular arcade goer could ask for. A ton of Pokemon Stardust machines, row of claw machines ready to rub people blind, a healthy selection of rhythm games, and of course, my personal favorite, these two maimai cabinets running version 1.61-F. As I sat on the nearby seats waiting for the other players to finish their sessions, it finally hit me that this was it. The last stop. The final machines of this entire 3-day adventure. Let's make this last session a good one, shall we? As I started hitting those buttons, it felt exactly like every other good Q Power cabinet I played throughout this adventure. Crisp, tactile, and not mushy, exactly as the maimai gods intended. The touch sensor were also doing touch sensor things, faithfully registering my frantic swipes and questionable gameplay decisions. Ignoring the cosmetically cracked button on Cab 1 Player 1, this machine still plays exactly what you expect for, and honestly, please don't change. Alright, let's finish this adventure with a bang! And that's how we end it, a fitting FC to close out 3 days of arcade hopping across Metro Manila. As I walk away from the arcade for the final time, all I can say is that Q Power at Mall of Asia feels like one of the complete packages. The arcade itself has all the bells and whistles as you'd expect, the mall has more amenities that you could reasonably ask for, and the maimai machines are in good condition that you can sit down and grind sessions without worrying about the machine fighting back. Sure, one button may be cracked, but gameplay wise, you're still rocking. This location earns an easy S tier, and honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better place to end the journey. For 3 days, across 22 locations scattered throughout Metro Manila, and after spending far too much money on transportation, tokens, and credits, I can finally say this. I have visited every maimai location in Metro Manila. And honestly, the biggest surprise was how playable almost every machine was. Whether you're in Alabang, near Mall of Asia, by the riverbanks of SM Marikina, or deep inside the endless halls of SM Fairview, you'll find a machine worth playing on. Sure, some locations had their issues, looking at you SM Manila, but none were truly unplayable. Was this a good idea? Probably not. Was it financially responsible? Absolutely not. Was it worth it? Hell yes. I got to play a ton of maimai, explore parts of Metro Manila I never seen before, meet fellow players, learn from the experiences, and share a few laughs along the way. At the end of the day, where you choose to play is entirely up to you. These were simply the arcades I visited, the machines I played, and my experiences with them. And with that, our 3-day maimai adventure finally comes to an end. Until next time, paalam!